Welcome back to The Juggle is Real. I'm Andriana, and I'm so glad you tuned in because this conversation felt like such a deep exhale for me. And it also might be one of the most important conversations you can listen to right now. This is the perfect time as we head into March break. You might have your kids around more. We're heading into the spring and the summer months. We know summer holidays are creeping in. And if you are feeling really exhausted when it comes to your parenting and the parenting battles and the struggles, you're tired of repeating yourself, you're tired of negotiating, you feel like discipline has turned into such a power struggle in your house, I hope this episode changes everything for you. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Kim Van Dusen, a licensed marriage and family therapist, registered play therapist, professor, speaker, media expert, and the author of the upcoming book, Parenting Through Play: Creative Strategies for Building Better Behavior, Deeper Connection, and Positive Communication. She's also a mom of two, and she is the founder of The Parentologist, which is a parenting brand that blends therapy, practicality, and real life rhythms. And today we're talking about something that sounds so simple, but it is deeply, deeply rooted in psychology and it is research backed. I'm talking about play. And not necessarily the fancy kinds that you might see on Pinterest that require 72 stops and all of these steps and handmade slime recipes and buying out a craft store and finding glitter in your couch cracks for the next 12 years. I'm not talking about adding more to your plate. I'm talking about how play can regulate the nervous system, prevent power struggles, strengthen attachment, reinforce boundaries, and build better behavior without constant correction. So if you've listened to episode 186 with Dr. Bethany Bilodeau, Dr. B, about behavior being communication, this episode builds on that because what if the answer isn't more consequences and discipline? What if it's more connection? Let's dive right in.
This is the Juggle is Real podcast. I hope you feel seen, that you realize your worth, lighten your load, and prioritize your own needs. As we hear from leading experts and well-known faces in the wellness, entrepreneurship, education, and motherhood space, I hope you gain insights, proven practices, and learn actionable tools to help you enjoy the juggle of work, family, and everything in between with a little less stress and a lot more ease, joy, and fun. Most of all, I hope you find what you need to simplify, streamline, and supercharge your own journey of better balance and self-love. Are you with me? Let's get started.
This episode of The Juggle is Real is supported by Orange Naturals. The end of winter can feel like the longest stretch of the year. Am I right? We know spring is on the horizon, but sunlight is still limited, the snow is still kicking, and often our bodies feel it. During winter, especially in northern climates like where I am, the reduced sunlight can lead to lower vitamin D levels. And vitamin D plays an important role in supporting immune function and overall wellness. Pairing it with vitamin K2 helps direct calcium to the bones, making it a smart combination. I take my D3 plus K2 in a soft gel. It is great. And then there's gut health. I don't know if you know this, I did not know this, but 70%, over 70% of your immune system lives in your gut. It makes a lot of sense then to add a daily probiotic to help maintain healthy gut flora, supporting digestion and overall immune function. I've been keeping Orange Naturals Rapid Restore probiotic on hand. It's especially helpful if you've been sick or on antibiotics and your routine just feels a little off. Orange Naturals offers targeted probiotic formulas for adults, women, and kids, making it an easy way to support the whole household. You can find Orange Naturals products at well.ca or at Shoppers Drug Mart, and learn more at orangenaturals.com. That's orangenaturals.com. As always, speak with a healthcare professional if you have questions about what's right for you. Now let's get back to the episode. Dr. Kim, welcome to The Juggle is Real. I'm so thrilled to have you here with us today, and you are in sunny San Diego. How are you doing?
I am doing great. I just took my newly owned puppy that we just adopted a few weeks ago on, I think, her fourth walk since she's been alive, and just soaking in the fresh air and the weather. And it has been just so beautiful. And just, I had surgery recently. So this was my first time, really wearing my weighted vest again and going on a long walk. And it just felt really good to be out there and, just take a nice walk in the fresh air. It was beautiful.
Get back into the swing of it. I hear you. It's, when this
Yes.
episode's going to be coming out, it's going to be March. We are just ahead of March break, and that's when we start to see here up north, like, the sun's out longer, the days are longer, everyone wants to get out.
Yes.
And I think this conversation is coming out at the perfect time. I mean, you are, gosh, you wear so many hats. I'm so interested in learning more and learning about your journey because, of course, you're a mom, a wife, a therapist, an author, a founder of this incredible brand, The Parentologist, a business owner, so many more things, of course. I'd love to know more about you and who you are. Take all the hats off. Tell us about yourself. How has your journey brought you to where you are here and now?
I'd have to say, I spent a lot of time, my first master's was in TV broadcasting, and I spent a lot of time in the entertainment industry, interviewing celebrities on the red carpet for movie premieres and, working in even a sales and marketing job, basically selling airtime for syndicated national radio programs, doing a lot of voiceover work. So I kind of come from, that marketing background, then also a TV background. So then when social media started, coming around 2015 is when I started The Parentologist. And all those things had to come together, right? My marketing background to be able to sell a brand and market a brand that I would truly believed in, and having that on camera presence. Now, back then, Instagram didn't have reels, and I don't even think FaceTime even existed on iPhones yet. Like it was so new, all of that video content. But I think that's helped me be able to be comfortable in front of the camera and be able to speak, to people like yourself, even on video podcasts now. So but when I first started my doctorate program, I always had a dream of having my doctorate. I really wanted to be a professor. I wanted to be an author. And so getting that doctorate was very important to me beyond becoming a master's level licensed therapist. So that was my first drive. The second drive is when I became a parent. My program that I received my degree in did not have any type of child therapy, play therapy, coursework whatsoever. And so I had to go outside of that to be able to, fulfill those requirements. And when I first started, I wanted to be a couples therapist. I fell in love with Dr. John Gray, the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, back in the day when I first started, college. And I thought, what a great job to just sit back and listen to everybody. Because everyone always told me my whole life, you're such a great listener and, you're so easy to talk to. And I thought, okay, that might be a good career for me. But then I started doing couples therapy early on in my career, and I thought, this is too hard. I can't do this. And I wasn't even married yet myself. Like it just wasn't my niche. And so I took my first play therapy class, and I fell in love. I just fell in love with it. I was a new mom, or becoming a new mom at the time, and everything just meshed and everything just clicked. And so the play therapy love, the getting my doctorate, becoming a mom myself, and actually living that personal experience as a mom and giving advice as a parenting expert, if you will, on not just things that I knew as an expert professionally, but then I'm educated with, but also as that personal experience and that heartfelt warmth that I knew other moms were experiencing itself with young children. And so the Parentologist was born, and everything else kind of tumbled after that. The podcast, the book that's coming out, it's all very, it's been 10 years of in the making. People don't realize where you start. They only see where you are now. And it's been a long time coming, and a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of perseverance. But it feels good to be where I'm at now and to reach so many people all across the world in my work. And I'm so grateful, and it's such a blessing.
Well, we're so grateful that your journey has led you to where you are now. And I mean, it's interesting that you started this journey and you started these courses in play therapy, before becoming a mom, as you were becoming a mom. How do you think being able to see things through that lens shifted how you parented your children? And then what has surprised you with your own kids? You said you have two children, they're sort of in those middle ages now. And, looking back, seeing how things have progressed, like, how do you think you were able to support your kids differently, and what has surprised you most about your children as you've taken these new steps in this journey as a play therapist?
That's a great question, first of all. I think being able to parent in a play based way, it just became very naturally to me. And I don't know if it stemmed first from some of the play therapy approaches I was learning in school at the same time and wanting to apply those in my own life. And I think part of it just really came from my gut of, I don't want to punish my kids if they're in a bad mood and they're, being defiant or they're not listening. It just didn't feel right to me. I grew up in a very strict home, and I felt like I wanted to do things differently. So I think there was a drive to change things as a parent myself and really nurture my kids versus, like I said, driving discipline, to when they were not being well behaved, honestly, and coming from a softer approach, but also at the same time, having them learn healthy limits and boundaries. So, I think a lot of times people think a play-based parenting approach, that I talk about in my book and talk about often on my social media platforms and blog, etc. They think it has to do with all sunshine and rainbows. Like, oh, everything's just play and everyone looks at play as fun. And it is. And it's very therapeutic. There's a lot of benefits to play. But it's also paired with setting healthy limits, setting healthy boundaries with your kids. So you do have to give natural consequences sometimes to their actions. It's not a free for all. And it's much more than a gentle parenting approach where they are held accountable for their actions, but in a way that honors them, in a way that lets them feel heard, lets them feel loved, gives them a voice. So that's, I hope answers your first question. And I think what surprised me most as a parent is, again, how natural it came to me. And, I kind of just adopted it and I saw that it worked. And that's the thing, is that when people read my book, when I parent my own children, and with all the hundreds of clients I've had over the years and all the families and children I've worked with, is these actually work. And this is the first time there's been this combination of play and, say healthy limits and boundaries, which we can go into more later, what that actually means. To pair them together is what works, is to have both. And my kids love it. Like, they ask me all the time, Mom, I don't want to clean my room. Can you give me a play-based approach on how I can make it more fun? Because that's not really a preferred activity. Or when it comes to eating new foods and trying new foods, can you make it fun? So sometimes I do. And sometimes instead of using a fork, I get a pair of tongs out and they eat with their tongs, Or just, sometimes it's just little tweaks and little modifications you make on a regular basis to make things a little more appealing to kids. And it's, as soon as you do it, you want to keep doing it more. And I think it just came so naturally. And I don't know if I'm surprised my kids adopted it so well. But when my kids and when my clients adopt it, it still surprises me of, oh my gosh, like, this actually works. This is so exciting. And I still get a little, surprise every time something actually works. I'm like, oh, I'm onto something. This is, and it's exciting to me and a little surprising at the same time, because I shouldn't be surprised, because I know they're evidence-based practices and I know they work, but it still surprises me sometimes how well it actually works and how well it changes their behavior, their mood, our connection, everything.
This is so good. I want to just jump in. I think a good place to start would be to talk about the discipline piece. You mentioned that your parents were really strict in raising you. I think, many people can relate to that. Or, we have so many shoulds. We're told so many different things. And I think so many parents are just exhausted. And it's not because we don't care, but it's because we care so deeply and we feel like we're constantly managing so much. And then, our kids' behavior, it just weighs on us, like it deeply, deeply affects us. And what I love about your work is that it's not lowering standards. It's not saying like it's a free for all, like you mentioned, but it's strengthening that connection piece. So to begin, I think it's important to cover some of those fundamental things that parents who are feeling like they're constantly correcting their kids, or they're enforcing like in a very strict way, or they're just tired of the constant like nagging and repeating themselves. Talk to us about sort of this piece. Why does that traditional notion of discipline often backfire?
And I agree with you. I do think parents are overwhelmed. They're exhausted. Our mental load alone, even speaking of myself as a mom, is just, I mean, there's constantly things on my to-do list. And if things aren't going, timely in a timely manner, or, in a way that I feel like needs to happen, like my kids should know how to behave. My kids should know to listen. And if they're not, it just triggers something, I think, like you said, in our hearts and our brains, that it should be different. And so we have high expectations of our children to behave in a certain way. And sometimes we forget their developmental level of they probably won't behave. Like kids are a little designed to do trial and error, to take risks, to maybe press, up against boundaries. And so just understanding just how the brain works in a child and how it's still developing, even until they're 25 years old, and, they're using different parts of their brain that just aren't developed enough yet to think like adults and to act like adults and to behave like adults. And so I think the first part is just a parent understanding, again, the brain and cognitive piece of all of this. And then, and I've been there too. Trust me, there's been times where I throw everything I say in my book out the window and I become a real human. And, I may snap at my kids because I'm just completely overwhelmed and exhausted myself. So if we do it sometimes, but if we catch ourselves and say, oh, mommy didn't act very good today, and then go back and make a repair, maybe apologize, it shows them that we're human. So it's not about being the perfect parent. It's about trying the best you can under the circumstances you're in. And there are going to be stressful moments. You might get fired from a job. You might be in a fight with your spouse. You may maybe you have a sick child who's kept you up all night and you're, lacking sleep. Like there's a lot of things that we're being pushed up against that will happen. So first and foremost, and I just posted about this the other day, that a parent has to be regulated first before we expect our kids to be regulated. So, I know self-care is so cliche these days, and, wellness is such a big, thing, especially on Instagram and social media of, let's all just, take care of ourselves. Well, how the heck is that supposed to work? When we have all these to-do lists and things, commitments and responsibilities, and our kids are acting up, how is that even supposed to happen, especially in the heat of the moment? So in my book, I do have a whole chapter on self-regulation, not just for the child and how to help your child self-regulate, but also to help the parent self-regulate. And some of that actually play does help that. But, some of it is just taking those micro self-care breaks throughout the day. So I talk about obviously deep breathing. I talk about getting outside and just stretching your arms and, for a few moments and getting fresh air, changing your environment, going on a quick brisk walk around the block, taking your kids with you. It's going to reset everybody. One thing I talk about in my book is called wellness winks, setting a timer on your phone throughout the day and just checking in with yourself. Have I drank enough water today? Have I gone to the bathroom? Have I eaten enough? How much sleep did I get? And then, also give yourself grace and say, okay, I had no sleep last night. I've been on the run all day. I'm exhausted. You're not in the right mental space or even maybe physical space. So really taking care of your needs first. And then once we're able to do that and get in a rhythm of recognizing those triggers in us, then we're able to parent our children in this more, let's say, gentle yet effective way, through the methods I talk about. And like I said, just, knowing that kids aren't going to know everything. And here's a quick example. When a child sits down at a table for mealtime and they're kind of hopping around, they're talking, and they're maybe, playing with their food, a lot of times, many parents will discipline them right then and there. Stop fidgeting, stop playing with your food, sit down and eat. You hear those comments over and over again. And, maybe the child was at school all day and sat still in their seat for 6 hours at school so they wouldn't get in trouble with their teacher. And when they come home, they feel free and they feel safe and they feel, comforted of being in their own home. And that's the time to maybe fidget and move around and so forth. And so just kind of understanding from that perspective. Or like I said, I have a whole chapter on making mealtime fun, and making it so kids will actually eat and sit still. But if we just expect our kids, well, they should know better. They should know to sit still at the table. Well, they might, but their bodies may not be able to control it. Or it might need that patience and that repetition and those teaching moments to say, hey, what are the rules of the table? We sit down and, maybe giving them little breaks in between bites, like take a bite and then you get up and you walk around the kitchen island, then you come back and sit down, take another bite. Like maybe they need that. And that's okay. It doesn't have to look so perfect because as our adult mind, we think they should know how to do this and they should do this. But kids can't necessarily do that sometimes. And so giving them some grace also and kind of having some fluidity and flexibility in how your behavior expectations are of them is going to help a lot.
It sounds so simple when you put it together like that, and I love it. And I know it is more challenging in the moment, but you do say that discipline doesn't have to feel like a power struggle. So what's actually happening, like from a psychological perspective, during that power struggle? You mentioned the example: you're sitting at the table, your little one goes off, he's running around, or he's fidgeting, or he doesn't want to eat, he's playing with his food, and you're like, sit down, eat your food, you're not leaving this table till you eat every single bite. Like, so what's going on and with that power struggle dynamic?
So again, I feel like we could talk for hours, even just on this question alone. It's just such a good one and such a relatable one. It's so prevalent to what, I think parents go through with young children. Is first of all, figuring out what the behavior is behind what's going on. Or, so if a child has a meltdown at the table, it's probably not just because they don't like the broccoli that you're serving them. Sure, that could have been the last straw and the trigger, but there's other things going on, So being curious, being the detective and saying, okay, they're having a meltdown right now. What is happening? It's not just what's on the surface, most likely. They are tired. They aren't feeling well. They had a fight with their friend at school that day and they're just in a bad mood, or whatever the case may be. Maybe they didn't get their normal playtime in the backyard because you were running errands all afternoon and they didn't have any decompression time after school. I mean, there could be a million reasons why they act a certain way. So first, instead of just jumping right to anger, right to punishment, right to discipline, it's giving them the benefit of the doubt, taking a deep breath yourself and saying, okay, I'm not going to get in a power struggle today, and being aware of that and mindful of that. And like I said, being curious, be the detective and figure out, okay, what's going on behind the anger, behind the power struggle. Maybe it's because they didn't get enough empowerment throughout the day. Kids are told what to do so often by their teachers, their parents, their coaches, whoever, all these adults, and they don't get a lot of choices. And so I think sometimes just letting them feel empowered and giving more choices sometimes helps with some of those power struggles, because they're not fighting for that power so much, fighting to be right, And I think a lot of parents kind of put parents in a category, adults in a category, and then kids in a category. Well, I'm the adult, so you better listen to me, or I'm the adult, so you should listen to me. And kind of meeting them more where they're at and saying, okay, they might need more choices. They might need more empowerment. They may just need to feel heard and seen, and so it takes a couple of things. So I think just, when you see the power struggle, no, it's probably not what's on the surface is what's happening. And then kind of sometimes let them say, okay, well, if you don't want to eat the broccoli, what's another vegetable you do want to eat? And again, it takes that fluidity. It takes the creativity, thinking outside the box of just, I made this dinner and you better eat it. And if you don't, you're sitting at the table until you finish, or you go straight to your room and go to bed. There's other options, and just being able to think creatively outside the box of saying, okay, what will make this better so we both have a win? Because if your child's in a bad mood, you're not going to be in a good mood either. And that's not fun. So if you want to keep things light and happy and, I'm not saying give in to your kids all the time, by no means. There is still rules and responsibilities and, being accountable, like I said, for their actions. But find out what's behind the emotion first, and then find a way together to collaborate and connect, and how to make it a parenting and a child win at the same time. And that isn't always what's going to happen, but that could be where you start first, and then see if that just makes things just a little bit easier.
Support comes from Boogie Wipes from the Boogie brand. If you're a parent, you know that late winter and early spring bring a very specific kind of parenting challenge: runny noses everywhere. Between lingering colds and the start of seasonal allergies, it can feel like kids always have a sniffle, especially when you're out or just trying to get out the door. One simple thing that has made life easier for a lot of parents is Boogie Wipes from the Boogie brand. Unlike regular tissues that can irritate little noses, Boogie Wipes are made with natural saline, which helps dissolve and wipe away boogers more effectively. They also contain aloe, chamomile, and vitamin E, so they are gentle on sensitive skin while still being tough on those messy moments. I very much appreciate that they come in a resealable pack with a hard flip-top lid to keep fresh, and make them really easy to keep in your purse, your baby bag, backpack, or in the car when you're on the go. Because sometimes the smallest parenting tools make the biggest difference in keeping the day moving. You can shop Boogie Wipes and other Boogie brand products on Amazon.ca and at Walmart Canada, or head to boogiewipes.com to learn more. That's boogiewipes.com. And now let's get back to the episode. So then, neurologically speaking, like what does the play-based approach do that is different compared to, say, the lecturing, the consequences, the ultimatums? Like, what is different? Like, and how would a child's brain process that differently?
So play is a child's language. That is how they comprehend. That's how they conceptualize the world. That's what they understand. So I always say this example, and sometimes people laugh and sometimes people think it's kind of gross, but think about how two dogs meet. When two dogs meet for the first time and they try to connect and figure out, how to communicate with each other, a lot of times they will sniff each other's backsides, right? I mean, it's just a fact. It's just what they do. Not always, but sometimes but they sniff each other, right? It's a sensory thing. It's them trying to connect through their senses, through connection, through sniffing. And then think about how two adults connect with each other and how they start communicating. They usually talk. They talk with each other. Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. What's your name? Where are you from? You ask those small talk questions, find a commonality through talking. Kids aren't like that at all, especially the younger ones. They want to connect through play. That's how they connect best. And so there's usually a power struggle and a head-to-head confrontation between a parent and a child because parents often forget how to play or how to think that way. And they expect to talk things out through the lectures, through the lessons, through that vertical. However, kids typically, when they hear a lecture or when they feel like they're forced to talk to a parent, to sit there, sit still, have eye contact and have this long drawn out conversation, two things are going to happen. They either completely shut down and check out and they don't want to talk at all. And they'll shut down, maybe even start crying, in order to get out of it so they can maybe get sent to the room, right? It's like their escape. Or they'll fight back and they'll get defiant and they'll say, I don't want to talk to you, but I can't tell you that because I don't even know how to communicate that to you. And I don't want to get in trouble for being defiant. So I'm just going to power struggle with you until one of us just breaks. And so being able to parent through a play-based lens, actually speaks your child's language. It's not about you in that situation. It's about your child. And it's about your connection with them. It's how you communicate with them. And so when you communicate them through play, they understand it. They get it. So, they are more likely to comply behaviorally when you communicate with them through this way and through a play-based way.
That makes so much sense. So then if we feel like our child is just like constantly pushing limits, maybe we're trying this old method, like what would be a first small way that we can use play instead of like the constant correction?
I love that because that's basically what my whole book is about. It's like chock full of just very practical how-to steps of, I have a chapter on how to tame tantrums and manage meltdowns, or how to deal when your child has his anger issues, or if they're being defiant, and there's play-based little clips of literally different practical interventions that are pulled from a play-based therapy perspective, a solution-focused therapy perspective, or a positive behavioral intervention support perspective, all three evidence-based programs on how to, do these things, and how to diffuse some of these pushbacks from your kids through those three lenses, as the trifecta of really how to get your kids to behave, how to grow that deeper connection, how to have better communication. So here's two of my favorites. So, and I don't know, not everyone has stairs, not everyone has a 2-story house, but if you do, you can relate to this. Trying to get your kids to clean the stairs is just basically impossible. I mean, I can't even get my husband to do it, more or less my kids to do it, right? So I tried all the things. I mean, I would put notes on the stairs, please take me upstairs, and put a little smiley face on it and make it fun. And that didn't work. One time I got baskets. Someone told me, get some baskets with their name on it. And then if it belongs to them, put it in the basket and they can just take the basket up, almost like a little elevator, but they take it up, they put it in the room, they bring the basket back. That didn't work either. Yelling at them didn't work, right? Begging them didn't work. Bribing them didn't work. I mean, I tried everything in the book to get these stairs cleaned and I just couldn't do it. And so finally I just said, okay, what do I do for a living? What am I best at? Let's try this in a play-based way. And again, it's not always this simple. It is simple once you get to learn it and once it becomes part of your parenting mojo. It actually is much, much more simple. I think a lot of times parents just don't think that's going to work. And so they kind of write it off because they don't have that value for play. But once you do and you get the buy-in, it makes everything so much more fun, so much easier, and you're going to get better behavior. So cleaning the stairs. And so I said, okay, let's make this into a game. And so one child would stand at the top of the stairs. I would stand at the bottom. And obviously, if it doesn't break, I mean, there's some things you can't throw up the stairs. But I would, if it was a stuffed animal or just something like clothes, or I would just throw it up the stairs, and they would make a little basketball hoop with their arms, or they would have a basket, or they would just catch it on their own. And we made it into a game of how many times I could throw something up and actually get it over the railing, or if they could catch it, and they would, get these points. It didn't really mean anything. It was just for fun. But they would get points, and then they'd feel like a winner because they were able to catch some of the things. And they cleaned up the stairs like that. And now they want to do it all the time. And so it just changes your mindset of, okay, what's a play-based way I can handle this situation? And so that's just one example. And like I said, my book is chock full of them, but that's just one example of how to think in that play-based mindset and actually effectively play it out. I call it the play it out parenting method, to play it out where it actually works, and the job gets done, and everyone has fun. There's no power struggles. There's no defiance, and everyone comes out happy. So it works.
Sounds so simple. I love that example too, because it's so true. There's like the pile of stuff. You got all the things at the bottom of the stairs. Just please, please take me up the stairs. And I think that's so fun. And I can see how my boys would love that immediately. I want to move on, but before I do, just something that occurred to me as you were talking about this. I told you I have 3 boys. They're all very athletic. They play sports and they're very competitive. How can we you said they get, in your example, you said they get points, but it doesn't mean anything. I could just see my boys like immediately like who got the most points, who won, who lost, and then it turning into a whole other conversation because someone's crying because they lost because their stuffy didn't make it to the top of the stairs or whatever it would be. Any advice for parents who want to introduce more play without it turning into a big competition?
And that's hard. And sometimes the competition makes them do it better or makes them try harder to get it done faster. And so sometimes competition can actually work in your favor. And I talk about in that book when I talk about siblings and talk about especially when it comes to cleaning your room, and I can share that intervention if you want in a moment. But sometimes I think it's hard. It's hard to not have that competition. So I know some people probably won't agree with this, and that's okay. Some people will. Again, use it in your favor if you'd like. If it's going to get the job done quicker and they actually do it, then they have to understand. I mean, I think kids need to understand too, there is going to be times that you win at things, and there's sometimes you're not going to win at things. And sometimes the not winning at things is actually better lesson for them. So if you do a competition and there is one winner that maybe catches the most or has the most points or whatever, that actually might be good for them. Now, if they're not good at handling that failure or handling, that losing, I guess, in that moment, and you have someone in tears, I mean, that's not going to make it fun, right? They're not going to want to do it because they're not going to want to clean the stairs again because they don't want to be the one that loses, right? Mm-hmm. But if they can take it in good fun and say, okay, there is going to be a winner, there is going to be a loser, but you don't have to call it loser. You can just say there is going to be one winner. And you have 3 boys, so at least it's not one that's winning and one's that's losing in my house. But you'll have two people that don't win and one person that does, right? So that actually might make it better. But the losing part and the failure part is actually a really good life skill and a really good life lesson. And so again, it could work in your favor. If not, you could have them all win something. If they just get the task done, then they all can get something, whether that means 10 minutes extra of iPad time or TV time, some type of media, because that's always a big kind of incentive for children. Maybe it's they get 15 minutes to stay up later past their bedtime, versus the other 2 boys don't. But it doesn't have to be a monetary thing. It doesn't have to be a treat. You could do something like, oh, someone gets an ice cream or whatever. But it could just be extra time, like I said, on the iPad or, something that's small but meaningful. So that could be something too. And like I said, I have a quick example of that about how to clean their rooms. And so I do this thing called freeze clean, where when the music's playing, the kids clean their room, and when the music's off, they stop. And so I did it once with both of my children at the same time as kind of a competition of who could kind of get it done first. And it really did put a fire under them, and it was great. And then when the music stops and they have to freeze, and I'm watching because both their rooms are open, I can see both of them. That's not always possible for everybody. But if you catch your child who didn't freeze, they have to have basically a penalty, which I think your boys would like because, they play sports and they're into that. They would get a penalty and they'd have to go help one of their siblings clean their room until the next time the music stops. And so that makes them really try hard to freeze because they don't want to help their sibling clean their room, or vice versa. And so So you can make it fun when it's a little bit competitive between them. And again, if you don't want to have one winner and one loser per se, you could just have them all. Okay, as long as you all get your rooms clean, you're all going to get 15 minutes extra at bedtime, or you're all going to get a treat, or you're all going to get whatever. And they can all be winners. There is going to be someone that finishes first or maybe catches the most things up the stairs. So inside, there technically is still a winner no matter what, but they all earn something at the end as long as the job gets done. And that usually helps diffuse that a little bit.
That's helpful. And I'm going to use that for cleaning bedrooms. 100% going to use that.
Yes, try it. It works.
Now, I have to ask this because I know the listener might be thinking it, but it's crossed my mind because you must get this often, like from a mom who says like, okay, I get it. It sounds great. Like this method sounds wonderful, but like, I don't have the time. I do not have the energy to be playful. What would you say? I know you've given us some examples of how it can be simple, but what would you say to someone who's like, I'm too exhausted. Like I can't be playful right now.
So two things for that. One is there's always time to be playful. I would counteract it, honestly, because I know what it's like to be exhausted. I know what it's like to barely be working on like one cylinder and trying to make dinner, fold the laundry, pay the bills, do my kids' homework. I get it. I've been there. I know what that's like. So I'm not dismissing that by no means. However, and there's some days that it just may not work, and that's okay. You don't have to do this every day. I think the mindset comes from, let's do it the majority of the time. Let's just make that part of the way we have our household. Let's just value play enough to know that when we can, this is how we're going to parent, and things are going to go much smoother. And I think, again, once they have that value and once they get the buy-in and they know it works, they're going to keep wanting to do it because they know how simple and effective it actually can be. So I think there's that. And once they try it enough, it is some of it's just that mindset, some of it's that front loading, and it is a little bit at the beginning, a little more so. But once you get the hang of it, it just becomes second nature to you, just like any other way parenting would be. You're just going to automatically think of that play-based, intervention. Maybe you have to open my book up and look in that chapter and find a quick one. Okay, I'm going to try the robot today. I'm going to try the whatever today. And, you just find something that's going to work in that moment. I actually have, again, an entire chapter on how to parent effectively in a play-based way when you're overtired, overexhausted, overworked, etc. So I have a whole chapter of ways parents can playfully interact and connect with their children that doesn't require a ton of effort, a ton of time, a ton of work. And I have some different, interventions in there of things you can do to connect with your kids where you just don't have it in you that day. I also want to say, I think there's a misconception that I always like to debunk. I'm actually posting about this on social media this week. So if anyone's listening, that they go back, they can find this post because I literally just finished and I'm going to post it later this week, is this misconception that playing with your kids or having this play-based parenting mindset means sitting on the floor, with your children for 30 minutes every day in active dialogue, playing with Barbies, playing with cars, playing with dolls, playing with stuffed animals. And that's not the case. Now, is that time important to children and parents? Absolutely. And if you have the time and the energy to do that, great. That will help a lot. There is a time and place for that. However, what I'm talking about, especially in my book, is that you don't have to do that. It could just take something really little. Like I said at the beginning of this podcast, I was talking about my kids don't want to eat their meal tonight. It's not really a preferred meal. Last night I made meatloaf and broccoli and rice, and they liked it. They ate it, but it wasn't like a preferred meal. And like it was a burger and fries, right? Mm-hmm. And so I didn't do this last night, but just an example of something that's less preferred, instead of just sitting there and dredging through the whole meal and having them whine and complain and, make it fun, get some tongs out, do something that's just that little thing that takes 2 seconds to go to the door and get tongs out instead of a fork. And they'll think it's so cool and so fun. But sometimes it takes just that little bit of a modification that really doesn't take much at all to still parent in that way and still make it effective and get through dinner without the whining, complaining, and power struggles.
So good, because my next question was very literally, our mind will often go to when we hear play, like the big elaborate slime projects and like these things that take maybe a lot of time and make big messes. Like for me, it's like just the thought of like Legos everywhere. Like we had a big Lego disaster last night and it was like bedtime and we're putting Legos away. I'm like, oh, I wish I was reading my book right now instead of picking up Lego. But that's sometimes where our mind goes when we hear the word play. So I very much appreciate how you've reframed it and how it can seamlessly be integrated into the things we're already doing. It's not quote unquote taking more time or more energy. And sometimes in many cases, it's actually taking less energy because we're not getting into those power struggles. We're not, raising our voice. We're not getting all worked up. It's not frustrating us and our children and causing, more time out of the deal. So this is something I can really appreciate. The other thing I would love for you to debunk that you've just touched on briefly, but can we go into it a little bit deeper? The myth or what some parents might think of play being permissive, like, so you've mentioned, yes, we do keep our boundaries, but we can stay playful. How can we do this, and how can play actually reinforce those limits that we're putting in place rather than weaken them, or just being a pushover?
Yeah. So I think parenting from a playful mindset, from a play-based perspective, sets a foundation with you and your child that will increase how they respect you, how they view you, how they communicate with you, how they behave with you, and so how they listen to you. And so I think being able to parent where they know that they're in a safe place. So as a play therapist, the very first thing they teach you in any class in play therapy is create safety with your client. Once your child feels safe with you, and once they trust you that you have your best interest for them, then they're automatically more likely to comply, more likely to cooperate, more likely to do what you ask. So when you actually do set that boundary, or when you do ask them to listen, you already have that foundation of respect and trust and safety. And so when a disciplinary action has to happen, and it doesn't mean sending them off and yelling at them, telling them how awful they are and how bad they're behaved, and they get sent to the room for 30 minutes. Like that's extreme, but a lot of times that's our go-to. Or we take their iPad away for the day, or we, whatever it is, something that they care about. And usually if it's something that they really care about, like the better, because we know it's going to get them. Like, okay, this is their consequence for defying me or saying something, mean, or, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be that extreme. It could just be something simple of, okay, hey, you just, dumped your trash all over the floor. I need you to pick it up and put it in the trash can where it belongs. A lot of times it's a natural consequence to what they do. I talk a lot about repairs in the book, and if they, let's say, bite their sibling, or hit their sibling, or hit you, or something like that, there's a way to handle it where you don't have to ever approve of their behavior, but you can approve or focus on their emotions. So if they're having a rough day and they're just doing things that you're just driving you mad because they're just not being well behaved that day, and you just cannot wait for them to go to bed because you just want to pull your hair out. I get that. It happens. And your kids are going to have those days. They're human too. And so, being able to, like I said, be the curious detective and focus on the emotion behind the behavior is really what's going to help you with that, and not just discipline them for, what they're doing wrong for the actual behavior. But again, setting that healthy limit of saying, okay, what you did, I completely understand you're angry. I completely understand that you did this because, however, you still can't bite your sister. You still can't paint on the walls. You still can't, whatever the case may be. And letting them know that's not the behavior expectation. I talk in the book about how to set up rules in your house and those behavior expectations to go with it, and taking it out of you hurt mommy's feelings, you disappointed me, and shaming them for that, of instead not taking it from a personal way, but kind of putting it objectively of saying that's not the rule for our home. That's not the behavior expectations we have for this house or for our family, and putting it more in a values-based way of saying, that's not okay because you broke this rule. And because you broke the rule, let's figure out a consequence of what you can do. Whatever that is. And I have some examples in the book of what those consequences could look like. Sometimes I talk about a time in versus a time out, and having them actually help you make dinner instead of, so you can still connect with them instead of just sending them away, or, or whatever the case may be. Earning things back of saying, okay, you have 30 minutes to show me that you can behave, or show me that you can be respectful to your sibling, or whatever the case may be. Maybe it means cleaning off the wall that they painted on, or whatever. limit setting also could mean giving them a directive and, redirecting them to something else. So for example, there's an ACT method I talk about in the book. First, it's the A stands for acknowledge, acknowledge the behavior, acknowledge the emotion, say this is what happened. C is communicate the limit. So you communicate the limit of that's not okay again. We don't do that in our home. We don't paint on the walls. We don't bite our sibling. And then T is a target alternative. So then you say, okay, you can't paint on the walls, but here's some paper you can paint on. Once you clean off the wall, or once you clean off the paint or the marker or whatever is on the wall, and you give them all the materials to do so, then once they do that, then they are able to draw on paper or maybe an easel or whatever it is. Sometimes they just want to, like I said, push those boundaries. And so sometimes we say, okay, how about you just go paint outside on the garage with some washable paint? So then afterwards you can just squirt it off with a hose. Maybe they want to, have that little bit of, it feels like they're doing something bad, but they're not. Sometimes I let my kids go in the backyard with chalk and they're able to paint on our fence or chalk on the fence in our backyard. It seems like it should be a bad thing. Like, oh, I shouldn't be chalking on the fence here, but it's easily washed off. So sometimes it's just giving them a little something different. Maybe instead of painting with a paintbrush, you have them paint with a toothbrush or a toy or just whatever. Like sometimes it just means, doing something a little bit differently so they get the buy-in of, okay, you can't do this, but here's what you can do. And knowing, oh, I can do this instead. And they buy into that and they're like, okay. And then no more problem painting on the walls ever again because you gave them different alternatives of what they can do instead.
Love that. So good. I would love to know from your perspective, because you've worked with many families, you've been raising your own children through, this lens. What does this consistent and, not doing it perfectly, not every single time, we're all human, like you mentioned, but what have you noticed that consistent playful parenting builds over time in a child? And how does this evolve as a child grows, into tweens, into teens, and, then into adulthood?
So play, and again, this is in literature and research everywhere, and I'm sure you've heard of this. I'm sure a lot of the people that are listening to your show right now have heard of it too. But play has so many benefits where when play is a priority in the home, let's say, or when you're parenting, it helps increase positive communication. It helps increase social skills. It helps with being able to express emotions in a positive way. It, again, modifies behavior to make that more positive. It helps critical thinking skills. It helps problem solving skills. Like there's so many, it helps competence, confidence, all self-esteem, all those things. And so when you play from this, or when you parent through play at a young age, it helps develop all of these skills and all of that competence and confidence. So your child is going to get that life skill where they get out in the world and they think, I can handle the world. Like I can manage myself. I learned responsibility, through those limits and boundaries. I learned responsibility and accountability. And, I learned how to manage my emotions so they don't get the best of me. So I can control them more so then I can actually behave better. So, they're more self-regulated, like they're able to go out in the world, whether it's at school, as they grow up, into the workforce eventually, having those skills that they learned at a young age and feeling loved, feeling heard, feeling respected, having that voice as a young child will just really help their life skills later in life and just have that ability to function in a world that they feel like they can handle, and they don't need to fight for the power to get there. They don't need to behave badly to get attention. They're able to have that secure connection with their parent and be able to, effectively handle the world they live in.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, feel safe and feel like it's a space that they can grow in. This is so good. As we close out, you've given us so much to think about, so many helpful examples. I thought we could just do like a quick rapid fire if you could provide us. I know there's so much in your book that we're going to get the book. We're going to use it as a resource. We're going to come back to it, but maybe just three quick examples, if you have one off the top of your head, that we could use during what I feel many parents struggle with, sort of those like really timely moments that can be really challenging. Are you up for it?
Sure. Yes, let's do it.
Okay. A play-based approach for getting out the door in the morning for school.
Okay, one of my first go-tos is the floor is lava. So set up either some red construction paper on the ground and tape it to the ground from like where, like just going from the kitchen or the staircase or whatever's closest, maybe 5 pieces or so. And we say, okay, let's go. Like, the floor is lava. So hop out the door as quickly as you can, like, and try and get that urgency. Or pretending there's a volcano that's going to explode in the house. And if they don't get out in time, the volcano is going to explode, and just kind of making it more fun and creating that sense of urgency.
Love that. I'm going to try that for sure. What about a play-based approach for doing homework?
Ooh, I like this one. I like to do homework breaks. And so I'll do like after they finish a problem in math or after they finish, reading a segment for reading or spelling or whatever it is, take those little micro breaks through the homework so it doesn't feel so long and daunting to them, especially if they're little. And doing fun things, even doing a little homework scavenger hunt. So in between problems, have them go find something, like go find a spoon in the kitchen, go find a ball in the backyard, go find, whatever it is, and doing little scavenger hunts in between. So just breaks up the monotony of the homework, or taking those breaks and doing like jumping jacks or running a lap around the kitchen counter, whatever it is, so they can do those in between to get the homework done more effectively and quicker. So again, like you said, it's things that seems like it's going to take a lot of extra work, but it actually doesn't, because you're not drawing it out for 3 hours, having those power struggles, like I don't want to do my homework, the tears, all the things. You're making it fun so they actually want to do it.
So good. All right, last one, a play-based approach to support bedtime.
Ooh, I like that. So I'll just give you a quick example that happened even just with my son this week. And it's happened a couple times now when he goes through a phase, he's 9. And so he goes through a phase sometimes where he's scared. He doesn't want to sleep, or it's too dark, or he didn't have a good day at school. So he's just not in the right headspace to go to sleep and feel safe. And so we have a dragon stuffed animal that sometimes we'll give him that keeps him safe and protects him. And so, because the dragon's strong. And so it takes having a special stuffed animal or a special pillow to sleep with at night so they feel safe. But again, a stuffed animal that's like a tiger or a lion or something that's protective can help that. And then what I just did even the last couple of nights for him is he'll get up in the middle of the night and he'll come to me and I'll, go back to bed, this and that. But kids aren't really willing to do that sometimes. And so I'll take different stuffed animals that he has around his room, and I'll say, okay, you'll know that I checked on you because you'll see a stuffed animal in your bed. And when you wake up, you might be covered in stuffed animals because I came and checked on you 20 times, or it might just be 1 or 2. But he knows when he looks around, he feels safe when he's in his bed because he sees the stuffed animals that I put there as I'm coming in and checking on him throughout the night before I go to bed, since it's much later. So just again, it comes back to the feeling safe and feeling regulated before bed. So that helps too.
That's so sweet and so simple. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. As we close out, last thing, if the listener just tried one thing this week, one little switch, one little like shift, 1 degree difference, what would you want it to be? And what do you think the impact could be for the household?
I think the impact could be huge. I think sometimes it just takes baby steps to make a big change. I really do. So even if you just try one thing this week, I'm just going to go back to the tongs since, that's just been kind of the theme of today. But make one small step to make mealtime more fun. I feel like mealtime is such a big struggle. That's why there's a whole chapter on it, because so many parents struggle with mealtime. And so make something fun. So either my challenge would be to make mealtime fun, eat with something else other than a fork or a spoon or whatever the case may be. Like I said, tongs is a good one for that. And just, just playfully start thinking of ways of how can I make this a play-based way? If you're feeling that power struggle, if you're feeling that desire to make things easier, think, oh, should I do something play-based? And then you don't have to effectively execute it, but just think in that way of how can I make this a more playful way to connect with my child and have them, cooperate. I think just the thinking of things in advance. And if something comes to you, you think, oh, this is a great idea, write it down, put it in a journal, put it on your notes app on your phone, whatever the case is, and just start thinking in that mindset. And things will start becoming more natural to you. And when you feel the confidence to do it, you can actually effectively try it and see if it works with your kids. And I think it'll make a big difference.
We're having spaghetti and meatballs tonight, and I think I'm going to bust out some chopsticks. I think
yes,
I loved that idea, and I think that could be just so fun for everyone, my husband included.
Yep. Yeah, the dads like it too.
Yeah, exactly. Your book, Parenting Through Play: Creative Strategies for Building Better Behavior deeper connection and positive communication. It comes out in May of this year. You can pre-order it now. The link is going to be in the notes for this podcast episode, as well as how we can connect with you. But if we wanted to learn more, if we wanted to, reach out, if we wanted to follow along, where can we find you?
I would say first go to my website, theparentologist.com. It has everything. My socials are linked. My blogs are there. There's a whole book page with all the different places you can buy the book. You can also find me on most social media platforms, but primarily Instagram at The Parentologist. And then I also have my own podcast, The Parentologist Podcast, that you're going to be a guest on soon, that you can also go to listen for more topics on there that might apply to you and your family.
Oh, so great. Thank you so much for your time. I've loved this conversation, and I can't wait to get my hands on this new book. Thank you so much, Dr. Kim.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, was I right? Was this not just an amazing, important conversation? Gosh, what I love about Dr. Kim and her work is that it doesn't lower our standards, it strengthens our connection with our children. And what I'm taking away from this conversation is that play is an extra, it is preventative, it is regulating, it is so powerful. And if you're listening and you have been feeling stuck in those power struggles, or you're just so tired of correcting, negotiating, I hope this has given you a new lens and maybe even has helped you feel a little bit of relief. You can find Dr. Kim's upcoming book, Parenting Through Play, and all of her work at The Parentologist in the show notes. I've got a bunch of links in there for you. And as always, if this episode has helped you, please share it with another parent, a friend, someone who could use all of the incredible information that she shared today. We were not meant to do this alone, so share this with your village. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. You're amazing, and I'm so grateful to be able to share this time with you. Make sure you're following along, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you here next week for a fresh, brand new, beautiful episode of The Juggle is Real. Until then, take good care.